Okay, so today we're going to talk about factoring. This is a new chapter, finally. This is, if you recall, this is the most important chapter that we will be covering in Math 5. And we'll be learning this for basically the next week. Factoring is pretty important because we have to there are a lot of questions on the final exam. We've involved factoring. Okay, so let's take a look here. A factor. Before we start these questions here, the word GCF right here. This GCF stands for greatest common factor. And a factor is a number that can divide into another number. So, for example, if I'm looking for factors of 9, if I were to write them all out, they would be 1, 3, and 9, right? If I were to find the factors of 12, if I were to write them all out, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. The greatest common factor is what? It's basically the largest one that's in both groups, right? So greatest common factor, the largest one in both groups is what? 3. So find the GCF for 9 and 12, it would be 3. Does that make sense? So yeah, did you have a question? Okay, let's try B. If you look at factors of 10, 25, and 150, okay, let's do factors of 10 first. We have 1, 2, 5, and 10. If you look at factors of 25, what do we have? We have 1, 5, and 25. If you look at factors of 150, what do we have? We have 1, 5, 10, 15. What else we got? Well, 150, 25. I think that's it. Oh, actually 75 and 150. So these are the factors of 150, right? Now we look at each group and look at the largest number that's in all of the groups, which happens to be what? 5, right? So that means the GCF of 10, 25, and 150 is 5. Okay? Now here's the hard part, or it's not that hard. Michael 123. Oh yeah, you can mute your mic, Michael. If you go to your settings, I don't know what you're using. If you're using computer, there's a mute mic button. Alright, so when you look for x to the 4th and x to the 7th, right? When you have a base x raised to a power, the GCF is always the smaller of the two. Okay? So that means x to the 4th is the GCF. Right? Yeah, you could just scroll up in chat and you can see that. So if you look at part D, you see how it's 12a cubed and 18a squared. So I'm looking at the numerical coefficients first. So factors of 12. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. For 18, we have 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. Right? So what's the largest or greatest common factor for 12 and 18? 6. Right? So now you look at your variables, a cubed and a squared. So we know that the smaller of the two is the GCF, right? So that's why it's 6a squared is the GCF. Any questions? Okay, if you understand that, I want you to try D, part D here on check yourself 1 to the right. Yeah, just D, because I don't think it's too difficult. You got it? Alright, so very good. So real quick here, factors of 10 is 1, 2, 5, 10, right? Factors of 35, 1, 5, 7, 35. So we see how 5 is the GCF, right? So 5x to the fourth, because the smaller of the two is the fourth. So that's the GCF, right? Okay, hopefully everyone got that. Now we'll move on to actual factoring problems that we're going to see. Alright, so we're going to factor 8x squared plus 12x. Two terms here, right? So we have to look at the numbers first, 8 and 12. So we have factors of 8. So factors of 8 are 1, 2, 4, 8. Factors of 12, I'll put factors here, are what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 12. So we can see that the GCF is what for the 8 and 12? 4, right? And then we look at the variables, x squared and x. So the GCF has to be 4x, right? So what we do now is we divide 4x out from 8x squared plus 12x. We're going to divide the 4 out. Remember how we were doing this? 4x, basically. So the way we write it is this. We do the 4x here, and we put parentheses, because it's kind of like reverse distributive property we just learned from the previous section. So 8x squared divided by 4x is what? We get 2x. Then we have 12x divided by 4x is positive 3. So this is the way we write our final answer here for factoring 8x squared plus 12x. If you look at distributive property here, right? What do you see? If you did distributive property, you get 8x squared plus 12x, right? Which is the original problem. Does that make sense? Okay. Look at part B here. If we do find the GCF of 6a to the fourth and negative 18a squared. So you'll notice sometimes this number divides into the 18. That means the 6 is the GCF. So now you look at the variables, a to the fourth and a squared. That gives you a squared. So that means the GCF is 6a squared, right? So what I'll do is I'll write 6a squared here and then divide it out from both terms. So if you need to write, you don't need to write this, but if you want to write it, you can. So this is what we're doing. And whatever we get here is our other factor. So 6a to the fourth over 6a squared gives us just a squared, right? This is a squared minus 3. Whoops. A squared minus 3, right? So a squared minus 3 is what we put there. And this is our final answer. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's practice a few on your own then. Let's try A. A should be an easy one. So you have 5x plus 20. We have to find the GCF of 5x and 20. So notice how there's no x in the second term. That means x cannot be a GCF. So you just have to find the numerical GCF. So what's the GCF of 5x and 20? Yeah, so GCF is 5. So what I'll do is I'll write 5x plus 20 over 5, right? So our final answer is going to look like this. 5 times whatever this answer is. So what does this come out to? 5x over 5 is x. 20 over 5 is 4. So that means I put x plus 4 right here. So you see how this part right here, you can do it in your head. Does that part make sense? Let's look at the next one then. 6x squared minus 24x. So find the GCF. I'll give you a moment to look for the GCF. Okay, so the numerical part is 6, right? What about the variables? Very good. It's the smaller exponent, right? If they both have x, that means it's the smaller exponent. So now you can divide both terms by 6x, right? So your final answer should look like 6x times parentheses. What do we get? 6x squared over 6x is x. And then what's the second term? Negative 24x over 6x is just negative 4. Do you see how the x's cancel out here? In 24, when you do negative 24x over 6x, the x's cancel out. That's why it's just negative 4. Okay? Okay, let's see here. What about part C? I'll give you a minute to do part C. Find the GCF, and I'll let you try the whole problem, actually. Do the whole problem. Did y'all find a GCF? Okay, 5a squared is the GCF, right? Okay. Did you finish the problem, or is it still working? Still working? Finished? So we got 10a cubed, whoop, that's not, 10a cubed minus 15a squared divided by the GCF, right? So you notice how if you get the GCF wrong, you get the whole problem wrong, right? So that's why finding the GCF is important. All right, what's our factor here? We have 5a squared times parentheses what? 2a, yep, keep going. Minus 3 is correct. Did everyone get that? It's 5a squared times parentheses 2a minus 3. Any questions? All right, then let's take a look at these next few. I'll zoom in. Hopefully you could see better on the phone. Okay, let's see here. We have factor. This time we have 3 terms. So we have to find the GCF of all 3. So you notice how this 15 does not have an x? Therefore, x is not part of the GCF, right? So what divides into 5, -10, and 15? 5. Very good. So right below it, they show you how to do it. So when you look at the video, you can even see that. All right, so we have basically 5x squared minus 10x plus 15. We're going to divide that by the GCF 5, right? What do we get? We get 5 times, what's our first term? 5x squared divided by 5 is x squared, good. Our second term, negative 10x divided by 5 is negative 2x, and positive 15 divided by 5 is 3. Okay? And you can always check your work. You can check your answers by distributing. So if we distributed, what do we get? 5x squared minus 10x plus 15. Same as original question, right? So that's how you know you did it right. Okay? Let's see here. Let's try the next one. What's the GCF of 6ab, 9ab squared, and negative 15a squared? So you notice how there are 3 numbers, but the last one here, you see there's no b, right? So b is not part of the GCF. So first thing I would do is do the numbers first. 6, 9, and 15, negative 15. So that would be 3, right? So GCF would be 3, and then look at the A's. What's the smallest A? You have, yeah, A to the first power and no B, right? Because the last term does not have a B. So the GCF is 3A. So we can do 6AB plus 9AB squared minus 15A squared over the GCF 3A. So our answer should look like 3A parentheses. What do we have for our first term? 2B. Very good. Second term. Plus 3b squared. And our last term. Okay, so be careful. This is minus, right? So it's minus 5a. Very good. End parentheses. And you can always check your work at the end to see if it's correct. Okay? Any questions? All right. Let's move on to the next one then. Oh, okay, we have 4a to the fourth, 12a cubed, minus 20a squared. So finding the GCF is always the first step of any factoring problem. So this one we'll just do together. I'll do it, let's see here. Let me choose a different color. I'll do, no, I'll do green, yeah. All right, so we have 4. See, I'll look at the smallest number, 4, and see if it divides into all the other numbers. If it does, that's part of the GCF. That's an easy way to check. Okay, if it doesn't divide, that means you have to find a different number. So 4, and then I see the smallest a is a squared. So that's my GCF, 4a squared, right? The easy, quick and easy way. Then you do 4a to the fourth plus 12a cubed minus 20a squared. We divide it by the GCF 4a squared, right? So now, oh yes, Michael, can you mute your mic unless, or change it to press to talk in the settings? Do you know how to do that? We can hear all your background sounds and your police sirens or whatever. And you guys can also deafen him or mute him if you need to, if he still doesn't know how to do it. All right. So we have 4a squared parentheses. What's our first term? We have a squared, right? Plus, what's our second term? 3a, good. And our last term is minus, right? Minus 5. Okay. Any questions with factoring so far? Okay. If you think you got it, I want you to try. Yes. Yeah, yeah, sure. Do you have any questions with this one? Are you good? Okay. So, if you think you got it, I want you to try maybe parts A, B, and C. You don't have to do D. How are we doing with the first one? Should I go with the first one so you could just double check? Okay, first one, I look at the numbers first, and I see that 8 divides into all the numbers, right? So since 8 divides into all the numbers, the GCF is 8. There's no B in the last one, so that means it's just 8. So I can do 8b squared plus 16b minus 32, and I'll divide all of them by 8, and I have 8 times b squared plus 2b minus 4. So you'll get that. Okay, great. I'll let you finish B and C. Okay, hopefully everyone else is done too. Alright, part B, I look at the first number 4 and it divides into all the other numbers. So that means 4 is part of the GCF. Then I look at X and I see X is in all of them. The smallest X is just X to the first. Then I look at the Y's and notice that the last term does not have a Y. So 4X is the GCF. Then I do 4XY minus X squared Y plus 12x cubed, and then we divide it by the GCF 4x. So we have 4x times parentheses. The first term is just y. The second term is minus 2xy. And the last term is plus 3x squared. Okay, any questions with that one? Okay. All right, try C. Did everyone finish C or still working on that one? You finished? Okay. So part C, we see that 7 divides into all of them. So 7 is the GCF. And then I see that x squared is the smallest x. So the GCF is 7x squared. Then we do 7x to the fourth minus 14x cubed plus 21x squared. We divide it by the GCF 7x squared. So we have 7x squared times parentheses. We have x squared. Second term is minus. Don't forget this minus here. It's very important. So it's minus 2x. And the last term is plus 3. Any questions? Okay. Now, if you look on the right side of the screen, we have something called a negative coefficient. So negative coefficient really means that your leading term is negative. You see how the x squared is negative here? So anytime there's a negative leading term, we have to factor out a negative number. So in this case, the GCF for all these numbers, this is a negative 1, by the way, right? So negative 1, negative 5, and 7. So we factor out negative 1. When we factor out negative 1, we get negative 1 times parentheses x squared, and then it all changes signs because we divided out a negative. Okay? So that's just a rule of thumb. Anytime you have a leading coefficient of a negative, right, we factor out. Zoom in a little? Yeah, sure. Oh, no. Oh. Okay. So you see over here we have negative 10x squared plus 5xy squared minus 20xy. So the leading coefficient here is negative, right? So we have to find the GCF of negative 10, 5, and 20. So I always look at the smallest number and I see how it divides into all of them, right? So that's how I know the GCF here is going to be negative 5 because our leading coefficient is negative. Okay, coefficient means the numbers in front of the variables. So negative 5, and then I look at the variables. So smallest x is just x, and the smallest y is just y. So negative 5xy is the GCF. So when you divide it out, you're basically doing negative 10x squared y plus 5xy squared minus 20xy, and we divide it by negative 5xy. So when you do that, what do you get? Negative 5xy is the GCF times parentheses. What's our first term? Negative 10 divided by negative 5 is positive 2, right? And then we have x. Do you agree with that for the first term? Right? The second term, 5 divided by negative 5 is negative. So I'm going to put negative. I don't need to write the 1 unless there's no other term to write. But if you want to write it, that's okay. Negative 1, x's cancel out, and you get a y. Right? The last term is negative divided by negative is positive, so I put plus 4. You see how the xy cancels out? So that's the final answer. Okay, any questions? Yeah, pretty simple, at least for that one. So if you can, please try these two right here. Exact same type. Let me know when you got it. Good? Anyone still working? What's the problem? Okay. So first one, the GCF is just what? -1, right? Okay. So now I'm not going to write the whole thing down. I'll just write the -1 out here, and then I'll just do a squared minus 3a plus 9. Are we okay with that? Okay. Now this particular problem, I do want to point out from we didn't learn how to factor this yet, but later on we're going to see that this is actually factorable. Okay, but for today, this is where we're going to go up to for this problem. Okay, this actually becomes a minus 3 squared like that with the -1 out here. But we'll do this later. Okay. The second problem, I noticed that -3, right? You see how -3 is part of the GCF, and then you have a b. Did you all get that? So when you divide this out, -6a cubed b squared minus 3a squared b plus 12ab, and you divide it by the GCF, you get what? -3ab times positive 2a squared b, right? Positive a, right? And then -4. Did you all get that one? Any questions? We're okay? Okay, I think we have, hold on a second here. I just want to check something. We're only going to go up to here today. this last group of problems here. Alright, this is called a binomial, factoring a binomial. So you see how this is multiplication, right? This is multiplication here, this is multiplication. So they're technically right now, this is one term, and this is another term. So this is two terms. But you'll notice that each of the terms, right, the x plus y is a common factor in both, right? So what we do is we factor out the common factor x plus y. So we take out x plus y, right? And what is left over? So the GCF here, let me write this down. GCF is x plus y in parentheses. So when you divide these terms, right, the 3x, x plus y, plus 2 times x plus y, we divide it by the GCF, x plus y like this, right? What happens when we divide the first term? We get what? Just 3x plus 2. I don't know if that part makes sense to y'all. Do y'all see that? Because we're doing this. If we were to write it separately, this is what it looks like, right? Right? So doesn't this cancel out and you get 3x? This cancels out and you get 3x plus 2, right? So that's why the GCF times parentheses 3x plus 2 would be the final answer. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. So these get a little trickier, but you don't have to do part B here. We won't do this one. We're just going to do one last example right here. Whoop. Just A. Okay, so don't do B. Let's just do A here. Okay, so do you see how we have two groups here? So the GCF, what would be the GCF of this problem? Anyone? It would be A minus 2B. Thank you, Brianna. That's correct. You see how A minus 2B is in both groups right here? A minus 2B, A minus 2B. So that's the GCF, right? So now we do 7A, A minus 2B, plus 3A minus 2B, and we divide it by A minus 2B. What do we get in the first? You get 7A, and then in the second group here is plus 3, right? So that means our answer is A minus 2B times 7A plus 3. And this is our final answer. Does that make sense or not quite? Anyone need to see one more example of this? Anyone? Okay, let me see here. Here's a example here. We could do number 11. You see over here, number 11? What's the GCF? The GCF for this problem. 3x plus 4y. Very good. So now we divide each term by 3x plus 4y. So actually, let me erase this. I want to just do this over. Okay, so we know that the GCF, I'm going to divide both of these by 3x plus 4y, right? Right, so that means GCF 3x plus 4y times, what's our first term here? What do we get? We get 2x, right? Do you all see the 2x? Because 3x plus 4y cancels out. We have 2x left over. So 2x. And then in the second group, what do we have? Negative y. So that's the answer. Okay? So number 12, I want you to try for yourselves. It should be pretty easy, or easier than we did. And then once we get that, we'll be done for today. And I'll assign you homework to do. Worst case scenario, you can mute certain individuals of a channel. So, yeah, if they're not able to figure it out, you could just mute that person. I think it's Yoshi, right? Oh, really? Oh, okay. It might be Michael then. Oh, okay. Then I'm not sure who that is. All right. Hopefully. All right. We'll see if people figure it out later. All right. What's our GCF here? W minus 3z. So we'll divide each term by w minus 3z, right? So these cancel out, these cancel out. So we get w minus 3z in parentheses times 5 minus w. Okay? Any questions with that? All right. So our lesson is going to end here. I'm going to post on Blackboard, as usual, the homework problems, and we'll go over them on Monday at the beginning of class. Okay? So that's it. Yeah. Sure. Well, right now I'm considering using something called web work. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a website called WebWork. We don't know yet about the final exam because it's supposed to be a computer exam. So as soon as the department or CUNY figures it out, they're going to tell us, let us know, and I'll relay that information to you. But for now, our next test is going to be on web work. I will post all the details on Blackboard, and we'll be doing basically online tests. It's a timed online test. Okay? So that's all I can tell you for now. Yeah, we'll just have to. Everyone has to adjust because I mean, this is like uncharted territories, for everybody in the world right now. We don't know what to expect, and you can expect everything to get worse in terms of the coronavirus. It's probably going to get worse over the next 2 months. So be mindful of that. Stock up, but don't like overstock. Um, I mean, worst case scenario, they say this can pretty much die out by August. if everyone follows, safety protocols. So yeah, August, yeah, that's what they're saying. Yeah, because people are not taking it seriously enough and they're still spreading it. So yeah, yeah. So just tell. We don't even know what's gonna happen yet. So I can't even tell you if there will be summer classes. Yeah. So as we find out more information, you know, they'll email us and we'll find out more. But for now, I don't even know. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna post everything on Blackboard. Just make sure you keep up with the announcements and try the homework by Monday. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.